Hi, Ryan. Thanks so much for joining me today. I want to tell you, I read with great interest the report that you prepared as part of the Brattle study on virtual power plants. And I was hoping we could have a bit of a chat of what that actually means and what it means for society. So maybe we'll start off, pretty general. How would you define a virtual power plant?
Sure. So what we're seeing is, a lot of households and businesses are starting to adopt new technologies that have a lot of flexibility in how they consume energy. So electric vehicles, batteries, smart thermostat, energy efficiency technologies, those tend to have a degree of flexibility that we haven't seen in prior technologies. So the idea with the virtual power plant is if you can aggregate those and control them in a way that provides services to the power grid, they can actually become a replacement for more traditional power plants that we've relied on historically.
Yeah, I love this concept. And when you talk about those assets, things like electric vehicles, thermostats, it's a lot of things that people want to own anyways, right? Presumably that helps with the economics that you're almost getting multiple uses out of the assets. It's not just a transportation asset, it's also a grid asset.
Yeah, that's right. And that's really kind of the core concept behind virtual power plants is customers are already buying these technologies because they want to be able to drive their electric car. They think that the thermostat looks cool on their wall and they can control it from their phone. And with a virtual power plant, you're able to basically just unlock additional value from these resources. It's basically the exact opposite of the way we've kind of approached the power system in the past, where we build power plants that we know we're only going to need to use for maybe a few hundred hours of the year. In this case, we already have an asset and we're just getting more value out of it.
Let's talk about this a little bit. It's always struck me as so odd how normalized it is that we oversize grid infrastructure to having the point of having multi-million dollar polluting natural gas plants that are only used a couple of weeks of the year. So is this perhaps an opportunity then for virtual power plants to provide an alternative solution?
It is, yeah. And so we actually in our study we looked at the cost of providing the same services to the power system from a virtual power plant versus traditional resources. And what we actually found is because of some of the way the economics work out, you can get the same benefits from a virtual power plant at only 40 to 60% of the cost of investing in those traditional resources.
Right. That's very telling, really, and hopefully regulators and utilities are listening. All right. It's a pretty impactful statement to say status quo really isn't working. Not only is it more expensive, it's also more polluting. Can you talk about the environmental benefits of virtual power plants?
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, there are different ways that virtual power plants can provide environmental benefits, but there is a pretty strong greenhouse gas emissions reduction element to this. And that can come in different ways. So if you think about a battery that's located on site at an industrial facility or commercial building that is charging from locally sited rooftop solar, the battery's charging from carbon-free energy and then putting that back onto the grid at other times and avoiding the need to power that building from carbon-emitting resources. Or in the case of a smart thermostat, typically those allow you not only to kind of change when energy is being consumed, but they also typically provide some sort of energy savings benefit, which has carbon reductions value as well.
People, I remember used to talk about solar plus storage as being the peanut butter and jelly of grid infrastructure, this perfect match of technologies. And this is kind of what I'm feeling in your description. The solar photovoltaics that can be located on your home or on your business provide the generation, but then the virtual power plant can provide that flexibility that kind of solves that problem of variable and intermittent power.
Exactly. Yeah. The analogy I like to use is that virtual power plants are yoga for the power grid because they give you just a certain degree of flexibility that you wouldn't have otherwise. So.
I love it. And we always got to work on our flexibility. That's great. Let's maybe look to the future a little bit. We've kind of touched on this idea of virtual power plants, perhaps electric vehicles or residential battery storage. actually replacing dirty power plants. To me, that's part of a broader movement. When we talk about the clean energy transition, there really is this movement from centralized, very large scale polluting power sources towards decentralized, generally cleaner sources that are customer sited, where people have more ownership. What does that mean to you in terms of benefits to society, benefits to the grid?
Yeah, I think, when we look at the energy transition, a really big part of that is electrification and bringing online, to consumers, electric vehicles and electric heating systems. In order to achieve our electrification goals, there is going to be a pretty dramatic increase in demand for electricity. And we're starting to see that some utilities and system operators have concerns about the power system being able to keep up with that rate of growth in electricity demand. So a really important way that virtual power plants can provide value is by actually coming in and allowing us to manage that growth and keep it to a more reliable level in order to facilitate this transition.
As you talk about growth in energy demand, I see two huge waves crashing on us at the same time. The growth of electric vehicles and the demand required to charge them, but also the increase in electrification of heat, which, I don't think people are really understanding the full impact that it's going to have. I understand just from electric vehicles, actually another Brattle study estimated that it would cost between $75 to $125 billion to get the grid ready for the number of EVs that we expect by 2030. Can virtual power plants help us avoid that scenario? We're just sinking more money into the grid?
Yes, definitely. And I think, what we are starting to see is a lot of utilities are coming to the table, and when they're proposing to their regulator plans for investment in new electrification infrastructure, that's being packaged with plans for energy efficiency and demand flexibility in virtual power plants in order to keep those investments affordable to their customers.
So you are seeing a kind of a change in the planning, and people are starting to recognize these benefits.
I think we're in the early stages, but we're starting to see a trend in that direction. Yeah.
Okay, cautiously optimistic. I like it. So thanks so much, Ryan. I really appreciate it. And I love this vision that your report and this conversation helps to paint of, again, a bit of a more optimistic view of the future, where customers, homeowners, businesses can actually invest in these technologies and take more control, but also feel good about it because it's lower cost to society and fewer environmental issues with these technologies.
Thanks. Great talking to you.